Yesterday, we were having a pretty in-depth conversation about the best sounding engine. We talked about the best sounding four-cylinder, the best sounding six-cylinder, the best sounding V8, the best sounding V10, and the best sounding V12. The one that we had the most difficult in our discussions was the best sounding V8. And because I was watching videos on Ferrari 355s, this popped up and it actually they just posted this video 2 days ago, and it's from Cars and Bids, the Cars and Bids YouTube channel.
I'm moonlighting from the Smoking Tire for a very, very good reason, because today we are here in Miami at the Concours Club, a country club racetrack, because Curated
When I
is
saw this
allowing me to
guy's
drive
name,
a Ferrari
Blackman,
355.
I was like, "That's the guy
And
from the
I have
Smoking
wanted to drive
Tire."
one of these for a very, very, very long time. But this is not a normal 355, nor is it a normal 355 challenge, even though it kind of looks like one. So today I'm going to tell you
he's
everything that's
never
going on with
driven
this car,
a
and then you can go bid on it on Cars and Bids.
355
In
Ferrari? This is the
1995,
first
Ferrari
one he's gonna
unveiled their
drive?
new mid-engine V8 powered sports car, the 355. All right, so you're probably wondering, why does this car have yellow stickers, a roof scoop, and a giant wing on it?
Because
Well,
race car.
beginning with the
Duh.
348, Ferrari made a single mark racing series, Ferrari Challenge, and they would support people that wanted to turn a road
I
car
didn't
into
know
a
that
race
they
car. They
had
did this
challenge
with
cars back
355s.
then.
About 108 were made of them. You'd order them from the dealership, and the
I knew
factory
they
would
had
install some parts,
458
the dealership
and,
would
you
install
know,
some other parts, and
the
boom,
more
you
modern
have a
Ferraris had challenge
now
series.
non-street legal
I didn't
Ferrari
know they
that you
had
can go
challenge series
racing.
back
It was
then.
like Spec Miata for people who traded in oil futures or invented Botox. But this is not an official Ferrari F355 challenge. It actually has a much more interesting story. This car was purchased in 1995 in New York, and just 1 year later it was stolen. It was discovered missing the hood, the doors, the interior, the wheels, and the tires. What was left was purchased by a racing shop who said, well, let's turn one man's trashed Ferrari into another man's golden race car. Now, because this was not an official F355 challenge car, they couldn't race it in that series. So they built
so
it
this is
so
not
that it
actually
could
a
race in
challenge
the
car.
new Speed Vision Challenge series. I know the names are kind of confusing. Speed Vision was a TV channel. TV channels were a
This
thing
is
we
a
used to
road
watch
car
before streaming
that was
existed,
stolen
and Speed
and
Vision
was
had bought a
turned
racing
into
series that they would
a
show on
race
this
car.
television. Now,
Not
here's where
a
things get
factory
crazy,
delivered race
because
car.
it is estimated that $300,000 of 1990s money was invested in this car to make it into what you see today.
Wow.
A fully built, psychotic race car. In the front, it doesn't look that different from a 355 Challenge, because those cars also had to have permanently mounted tow hooks, in case someone has a oopsie. But that never happened in any Ferrari Challenge series. If you search for it on YouTube, Ferrari Challenge series crash, you'll find 0 videos. You do have this incredibly aggressive carbon front splitter. And there's also carbon fiber doors. This stuff was made in the late 90s. It's an option on cars that cost $28,000 today. But back then, that was not the case. You also might notice the fuel filler cap mounted in the center of the hood for refueling during big races, of course. And then that incredible large
1995.
roof scoop. And that's not for keeping the cabin cool. That sends air
300
directly
grand in
into the air
1995.
box,
I mean, 300
giving the
grand today
engine
is
even more
insane
power.
amount of money.
One of the things that Ferrari would give you if you ordered an F355 Challenge, an official car, were better brakes. They're actually Brembos that came from the F40. It's quite a hand-me-down.
Oh.
And then the wheels are small, light, and hollow, like a bird's bones. They're magnesium, so that has the least amount of
Magnesium
rotating mass
wheels
possible.
and
The
brakes from the
GTB
F40.
came with electronically
Nice.
adjustable shock absorbers. Pretty rad for the mid-90s. Very common today, of course. The race cars came with a stiffer fixed spring, but this thing has Penske three-way shocks. This whole car was built to chase other cars. That's what's so cool about it is, the Ferrari Challenge Series is rad, but you're racing other Ferraris of the exact same make. So it's a spec series, that's rad. But this was going up against Porsches, Corvettes, Aston Martins, all kinds of other cars. So it had to be competitive. From the front, this looks like a race car, but you see cars on the street driving around with tow hooks mounted for style with like a little gymnast ring
Check out
hanging
the
from it or a
single
Hello Kitty
exit
dongle, sure, whatever.
license plate
You get back
exhaust.
here and you realize, no,
That's pretty
this
sick.
car is serious. This is an actual race car. The transponder is a giveaway. The transponder is how a racetrack keeps track of all the lap times of all the cars. Every time they go past a certain point on the track, a signal is sent to a computer and it tells you that the car ran a 1 minute or a 59.5 or a 102 or whatever. Two of the other giveaways are the giant rear diffuser. These look like speakers that you would see on a US Army base from World War II. There's a carbon fiber diff cover under there, and the diff says Ferrari on it. So just in case you needed a reminder and you happen to be laying on the ground. The exhaust system is insane.
God, of course.
I mean, it's a super trap
I've watched
pipe, but
Donut
it's an
Media for
8-to-1
years.
system. And it actually fixes one of the most notorious problems that the 355 had, which were cracking exhaust manifolds, which is an expensive thing to fix. I was gonna put my hand in the exhaust tip to show you what it looks like, but I don't want that image getting screen grabbed on the internet. So just use your eyes. It's big. Speaking of big, this wing is enormous. It's carbon fiber, it's adjustable, and obviously it helps with downforce at speed.
What is that in the
This keeps
background?
the back of the car planted to the ground as it goes around high-speed corners. Something you won't see very often is a carbon fiber engine cover like this one. This speed, just use your eyes. It's big.
See that in the background?
Speaking of
That's like there's some crazy stuff going on in the background here. Over here on the left, you have, that's a new Ford GT. The silver gray car is a new Ford GT. And then in front of the Ferrari, looks like a Diablo, like VT with like a big wing. It looks like a Diablo race car. What the hell? I mean, it is Miami, so.
big, this wing is enormous. It's carbon fiber, it's adjustable, and obviously it helps with downforce at speed. This keeps the back of the car planted to the ground as it goes around high-speed corners. Something you won't see very often is a carbon fiber engine cover like this one. This is very, very cool. First of all, you can see that the roof scoop feeds right into here. This is the air box for the engine. It's where the air goes into the intake plenum and then goes into the cylinders, where it then helps gasoline light on fire.
I watch both as well.
Here we come to the heartbeat,
I still watch
the
Donut
orchestra.
Media.
One of the main reasons why I love small engine Ferraris so much, because they sound so good.
Yep, I agree.
3.5 liter V8 engine.
What we were talking
The
about
regular
yesterday.
355 and Challenge had the same engine, 375 horsepower, the dry sump engine. The Challenge cars had a little bit more cooling added. This is not that. This is a 14-to-1 built motor that has about 433 horsepower, dyno tested. It's got a new racing clutch bearing. The head gaskets have recently been replaced. And if you look in here, you can tell that this is not factory stuff. There's way too many cool anodized fittings for this to be from a factory. Now this car has what's called a trans axle. A lot of cars have them, especially mid-engine cars. That means that the transmission and the axle are one unit and they are mounted behind the engine. By moving the engine to the middle of the car, you help with the car's balance. It also helps with the acceleration compared to a front engine car. As I said before, this does not have the normal suspension that a Challenge car came with. This has Penske three-way adjustable shocks. And right here, you actually have the remote reservoirs and the adjustment knobs for that suspension.
That's crazy.
The remote reservoir system also allows the shock fluid to stay a little bit cooler than if it was all housed in the shock itself.
$12,000.
Now, as you can see by looking around, this is full race car. This is all business, no fun. Racing is not the safest activity in the world, but it has gotten a lot safer because of rules, regulations, and the inventions of a lot of different gear. So to turn this into a race car that could enter the Speed Vision Challenge series, they had to install a bunch of stuff. Roll cage, of course. Just like the Challenge cars from Ferrari, you had to have a roll cage. You need racing harnesses because they will hold you in much better than a 3-point seatbelt. You also need a fire suppression system. That's that tank down there. If the car catches itself on fire, something goes wrong, you hit a button and it dumps fire retardant over a lot of parts of the car and hopefully extinguishes any fire that has started or stops it from growing any larger. And then there's also an engine cutoff switch, and you just turn it, like this one. You turn that and it cuts off all electricity going to the engine and basically turns the engine off. The ECU, it looks like an electronics store just was dumped back there. You can see the relays, the wires, anything you might need to change is quickly accessible.
This car runs
Drilled
factory
racing
ECU
pedals, aluminum, saves weight. There's no fancy dashboard, there's no carpeting, no sound deadening, none of that stuff. This is all exposed metal. Again, saves weight, and the fewer soft things, the less there is that could possibly catch on fire. You've got a system for monitoring your lap times, and then of course the Motec readout here. This will give you all of your crucial engine information like RPM,
I was wondering if it was factory ECU or not.
It's as legible as possible. You've got a shift light at the top. That will tell you when red line's happening.
About the ECU,
the center console
like,
looks like it was stolen
ECU?
from a Cessna.
Is it just like a stock
I built
Ferrari
myself
engine?
And then
like stock
didn't
tune?
pass FAA regulations.
Motec.
You can control your fans.
For those don't know,
you have a main on switch,
ECU
and then you have a starter button.
About 10
and that's
grand.
all you need. There's no climate control. There's no stereo.
This car
There's
has
no nothing. It's just the essentials. Whatever you need to be allowed on track is there, and there's nothing else.
Something you might notice is that the ergonomics in this car are bad.
I find it funny you talk about safety, but it's not wearing a helmet or gloves.
The 430 or 458. So we have a steering wheel that can adjust up and down.
I do track events.
Look how
wearing
far
a
away
helmet,
it is.
especially with that roll cage
track driving
right
is
there by
if
his
you can
head.
reach out and put your wrist on the top of the wheel with a bend in your elbow, that's optimal. This is not. It also wiggles a little bit. But my feet are fine. My legs fit. I'm pretty much the right size for this thing. If I wore a helmet, it would probably be rubbing on this roof.
Oh.
And if you're 6 feet tall, this probably isn't the car for you. Although, I can't tell. It's possible you could mount the seat lower, but the passenger seat looks like it's mounted to the chassis, or to the unibody rather. So I don't think there's a way you could lower that seat at all.
You wouldn't fit in.
A funny thing about the 355s is that the driver's seat is actually aligned more close to the center of the car than the passenger seat. So I'm pretty inset from where a window would be. Well, that's not good. This wheel needs to telescope, because if my fingers go in here, they're getting cut off.
Seems kind of janky.
That's...
Bro, look at how close the steering wheel is to the housing of the gauge cluster. Look at how close, like this, it's like this. Like, the steering wheel needs to come back.
Wow. Brake pedal, stiff. Downshifting. Heel toe is easy. Letting the clutch out, you just do it.
I'm sure this thing is intense to drive.
Gated shifter sounds and feels incredible.
Bro, you couldn't even fit your fingers between the steering wheel and the top of the steering wheel.
That is so loud.
And the dash.
It revs so fast. You can't hear any of this, I know.
They better have some exterior shots and flyby. If not, get it together, bro.
Wow. Yeah. You spend all the money on the sound. I get it. Wow. Redline 8,000. I'm shifting at 75. I don't want to buy a Ferrari today. Even though it has the fuel cutoff. God, it's so hard to steer though. You just can't get the wheel.
Yeah. Bro, look at that. What the hell's going on there? Like the steering wheel is, do you see, it's like, the top of the steering wheel is almost touching the dash.
I don't know what else to say. I don't know what else to say.
I'm sure it's still crazy.
Jesus Christ. I think I'm gonna cry. Oh my God. That's enough. Religious experience? I've never said that before.
The sound is even better than I imagined it would be, and I've heard these drive around all the time, but it is truly one of the greatest sounds I've ever heard in my life. You couldn't hear anything but the engine, so you probably heard it. Hopefully the audio captured it. Ergonomics are so challenging. This wheel needs to be brought back like 8 inches, because if I needed to catch any kind of oversteer, anything, like I can't fit my finger between the steering wheel and the dashboard.
That's crazy they gave him that car like
manual,
that.
not assisted. Here's what I'll say about this thing. The argument for buying this is a confusing one. And honestly, the argument for buying a 355 Challenge, a regular one, is tough because you can't drive it on the road, right? So it's a track-only car. And it was only allowed to race in a specific series, and that series doesn't exist anymore. The engines are known for having some fragile things that you'd have to fix, of course. This is good because if it's gonna be a track car anyway, why not go all the way? You know, you're not in a spec series anymore, so have an engine that has 433 horsepower. And by the way, power doesn't really kick in until 7,100 RPM, and then it rips. So you have an engine that's fully built and hopefully more reliable than the regular 355 engine. The negatives of this car, though, are it's even more rare. So finding a shop that can work on this could be more challenging than finding one that can work on a regular 355. You could take a 355 Challenge to a Ferrari dealership, and they'll be able to work on it because they know what the engine is. But this, it's more of a science experiment. You have to have a motorsports shop or the shop that built the engine work on it, because they're going to be the ones that understand it. The rest of the car is car. Wires, Motec stuff, not as complicated. It's fairly simple, and there's not a lot of fancy electronics like you might have with a modern track car with fancy traction control systems. You could go out and you could buy a spec Miata or a spec E46 or a Radical, a Caterham. There's a number of track-specific options for a person with this budget. But for me,
but they're not going to give you that experience.
What I fell in love with
those are better
cars is shape, sound, and feedback. The shifter is without parallel.
Gated 6-speed.
It feels good. This is a rod actuated shifter.
V8.
One of the changes they made from the 348, that was cable actuated. So some of that direct sensation is because you are moving metal rods. The shifter click, exposed gate, I mean, it's in my brain from childhood. Seeing Ferraris with exposed gated shifters, I think they're the coolest thing in the world. But they don't just look cool, they feel good. And the car sounds good. And unless you're in a racing series, any track special is special. You can learn from any of them. So I think with a few ergonomic tweaks, if you're the right size and you like Ferraris or you just like music, this is a pretty exciting option. So if you like this car and what it could be, you can bid on it on Cars and Bids. And I just want to say huge thank you to Curated for making a dream come true. I've always wanted to drive a 355. And shout out to Concours Club for hosting us here and letting me drive this thing on their track, because driving this on the street would not have done it any justice, especially the Miami streets, which are basically a grid. So thank you guys for watching.
So this car is basically, you know, as Zach said, there are a ton of cars out there that are track day special cars. You know, an Aero Atom, Caterham, more street car stuff as far as like, spec E30s or Z06s that are a far superior car from, track times when it comes to actually participating in wheel-to-wheel racing. But I don't think I think the person that buys this car, they buy it because of the way it looks, because of the way it sounds. It's a very analog, exciting, visceral, just wild driving experience, because gated 6-speed manual, 3.5 liter V8 Ferrari that revs to 8,000 RPM, and it makes the sounds that it makes. Unfortunately, they didn't have any clips of this car from the exterior doing like flybys. I really wish we would have been able to see that.